Hi, everyone. I'm Eva Yazhari, CEO of Beyond Capital Fund. Today, I am here with Aniket Doegar, the CEO and co-founder and founder of Haqdarshak, a company in India that believes that every citizen matters. I'm really looking forward to having a brief conversation with Aniket to talk about the company that he has built that is making welfare schemes and other entitlements accessible to Indians at all different levels of the economy. Aniket, great to have you here with me. Thank you for being here for this discussion.
Thanks, Eva. Great to be here.
So let's launch in. I would love if you could tell all of the listeners, all of our supporters at Beyond Capital, and anyone else who's listening, what motivated you to start Haqdarshak? What motivated you to start your company?
So I actually started about 12 years back with Teach for India, which is based on the Teach for America model, taught grade 2 students in a low-income school in Pune. And that's how my journey actually started. And in the community, in the following years, in my work in the communities in India, there was this huge gap that I saw, which was essentially in information that people didn't have access to the right kind of information, resources. We are a large country, 1.4 billion people. We have a lot of resources, but there's a huge digital and literacy divide. And that's how it got me thinking that there is a need for not only information using technology, but also a last mile service delivery model to ensure that people get access to this information and also get access to a quality service at their doorstep and in low income, rural and urban communities, which supports in government welfare programs, documents, so things like pensions, delivery of documents, identity documents, loans, insurance, all geared towards the government processes. And in the process, we also train local women as entrepreneurs. So that's how the journey, kind of the idea started, of course, with a bunch of failures. It's like summarizing it into that it all worked out well, but it's fair share of like a lot of failures in the beginning.
Well, you mentioned employing local women, but walk us through first how the company impacts the users, how it impacts lives.
So to give you some numbers, in India, about 800 million people are dependent on government support. That's the scale that we are talking about in the first place. And then we're talking about them being supported on free ration, housing, pensions, scholarships, cash transfers. So the challenge is that being a federal state and with such a large and diverse population, the information doesn't really flow to the last mile in rural and urban communities. How, in the first place, our technology essentially tells the citizen in the local language. So all the content is in multiple local languages. It's not in English alone. And it tells them what are you eligible for. So you put in your basic information. In real time, the tool will figure out from the cloud, which we have already digitized all the government programs. And it tells you, okay, you're eligible for a pension program or a housing program, depending on your profile, age, income, background, where you stay. Different parts of the country have different programs focused on agriculture, housing, and a bunch of things. And that's primarily the main intention of the program. Then because of the like I mentioned, like because we are going to the last mile in terms of communities, that's where the women entrepreneurs come in. But the platform essentially does that. Takes your information, matches it to the programs on the cloud, and tells you what you're eligible for, how do you get the service, and how you track that service.
Information democratization is so important. I think it's hard to wrap one's head around it when maybe you're not living in that particular environment. Do you maybe have a story of a customer and what they were able to access through your platform?
So I have two, actually. One quickly, when I started off, so I was the only one. I was going through a incubation program competition in one of the colleges. This is before even I registered the idea as a company. And I went to this rural area outside of the city, Pune, which is close to Bombay. And I went to this rural area. I went to a woman who was about, I think, 70 years old, and she had no clue she was eligible for a pension program. I had actually prepared an MVP, a minimum viable product, and had gone there and was testing it in my mobile phone. And I entered her information and basically told her you're eligible for this pension program. And the expression on her face, for the first time, she being 70 years, she had no clue that she was eligible for 1,000 rupees per month. which was huge for her. So I think that to me was a wow factor to realize myself how important this information is. Right. And I think over the last 5 years, there have been millions of other cases. I think just as recent as right now in COVID, India is battling an uphill task in the second wave. And our teams, even during this time, have supported more than 1,000 families in getting registration for vaccination, right? Registration for health insurance. That I think, I mean, one of the first experiences and one of the most recent last week, as just kind of two examples of how far we've come and how powerful the model is.
Yeah, I can't agree with you more. The wow factor is incredible, but also at Beyond Capital, we like to fund simple solutions to complex problems. I think welfare schemes are what everybody would view as the most complex, but I know that through the due diligence on your company, you do have a very simple solution. We even looked at one of your competitors and went through the app to see where we would land if we put in our information, and then after you give all your information, it just said, go here to this office. And I know that Haqdarshak takes this a step further. So what is the long-term vision for the company?
So I think, like you said, we build the technology and the content in the most simplest manner, keeping our user in mind, which is using local language, solving the complex schemes into a very simple language and telling them. And the second piece is that we realize that in India, with especially the kind of customer base we want to focus on, which is the low-income families, it is not possible to make an end-to-end technology solution, right? If you want to cater to those 800 million, it has to be an assisted tech model, and that's where the service delivery part comes in, because every family requires that handholding. So for us, the really big vision is that how can we support those 800 million families, not only with the information on government schemes and service delivery, going forward with all the other services, because what we are really doing is servicing them at the absolutely base of the pyramid, because we are getting them basic identity documents, basic government schemes, literally ensuring they're surviving and not falling below the poverty line. I think the next step for us is really strengthening and reaching that number, training as many people as possible, and ensuring that we can really make that huge impact. At the same time, I think the model is efficient as well, along with being very, very simple, because within the first 18 months, we've been breaking even and being profitable. So for us is extremely important, because I don't think in India, especially in a country as big as us, solutions can only scale if they're efficient and profitable. So we are really also focusing on that. How can we build solutions where customers can pay a small amount and we can quickly grow that? And that's the goal, right? How we've already reached 1 million. How do we reach the next 100 million in the next 4 years?
There are so many quotes that could come out of this interview. One of them is that solutions are only scalable if they're profitable and efficient. And I think so many in maybe the US and Europe believe that impact has to be a trade-off. And I'm constantly arguing, as we're raising our second venture fund, that impact can be baked into a business model. And your company really shows that as an example. You also brought up in a really important thread, which is the assisted tech model. We are kind of entering a world where we're seeing Silicon Valley move into some of our markets, particularly we see it in Africa, thinking that end-to-end tech solutions are going to work. The answer is they're not. And we know that from some of our prior investments. But I think you brought out a really important thread from a founder working on the ground, really doing the day-to-day work, that you need some level of assistance in the process of using technology. So thank you so much for highlighting that as well. Before we turn to you as a leader, I want to ask, how will the seed capital that Beyond Capital has given you, amongst other seed capital, help the company grow and scale?
So I think right now, one is the capital that Beyond Capital is providing as the seed capital. I think it'll help us invest in our technology, which I mentioned. We have already started our plans to use this money to invest in a lot of local language chatbots, IVR solutions, for our women entrepreneurs, for the assisted tech model, because like I said, the language, because assisted tech doesn't mean that we don't keep up with the technology, right? We need to keep up with what is happening on everywhere. We just need to customize it and build it for our local entrepreneurs, localized solutions. So I think all our seed fund is going to go there, because we believe that we have cracked the unit economics and the business side of things. using now the technology, I think we are rightly poised with all the capital that we have raised to take, like I said, the company from 1 million to a 10 million to 100 million. I mean, in the first 4 years of our business, we reached out to 100,000 families from 2016 to early, just before COVID 2020. Last year alone, we reached out to 850,000 families. And this year we are poised to reach 1.5. And I think we can double that number using investing the money from the seed capital. And that's where I think we're really now keen to really show what you just mentioned, right? Like profitable, scalable, social impact businesses.
Sure. You are known as a visionary founder who took on a very big problem. As you mentioned, 800 million people rely or are entitled to these services and don't all have access to them. Who are the leaders that inspire you?
So, I mean, the multiple, I think one of the groups and the leaders in India, a couple of them that I really admire. One is the Tata Group and the Tata way of doing things, the ethics, because I think from day one, I really believed that to grow a business into an institution, it is important to invest in the team. And there's no better example than how the Tata Group does it. So Ratan Tata and the whole Tata Group, I think as a young entrepreneur, that's a leadership group that I really look up to. And the other, of course, I think overall as a visionary leader, like someone who I have been influenced by a lot, I mean, I think from my beginning of Teach for India days, which is like a bit of a cliche, is Barack Obama, because I've been following him a lot. And because when he became president, I was in college. And it was reading a lot about Wendy Cobb back then, Shaheen, who started Teach for America, Teach for India. And the same time is what pushed me really to join Teach for India. I was 20 years old, just out of college, and that was started. So I think that he's someone, and I'm currently also following what he's doing after his presidential kind of terms. Because I like to believe that I look up to leaders who I can see in action. So I believe that he says his influences are Mahatma Gandhi and others. So I'm assuming looking at him and his values, something that, in the campaign mode and scaling mode is something that I'm really influenced by, how he's able to mobilize ideas. I think that for me is absolutely fantastic and something I really wish to kind of put in Haqdarshak.
Yeah, no, definitely a prime example of a conscious leader who's thinking about all stakeholders. And you're right, actually drawing that thread to Mahatma Gandhi, to Nelson Mandela, to Martin Luther King, and Barack Obama drew a lot of inspiration from those three leaders, which is why it's so important to ask that question: who is guiding your own entrepreneurial journey? So I will ask you one more question, which I ask on my podcast, and I would love for those who are listening to maybe stay tuned. Maybe we can have you on in the third season this fall of the podcast, of the Beyond Capital podcast. But what book is on your nightstand right now? Are you reading a book that's really inspiring you?
I'm actually rereading a book, again, very close to my heart, which I read earlier from Everybody Loves a Good Drought by P. Sainath, who's a fantastic journalist. Again, someone actually as a leader who I look up to, and he's a leader who works with farmers. And it just shows the plight of the farming community and the general people in rural India. Anybody who wants to understand the subcontinent, anyone who wants to understand how the rural families work should read about P. Sainath. Over I think now 40 years, he's been a journalist the only journalist consistently covering rural India. And his book, Everybody Loves a Good Drought, is an absolutely fantastic book. So I'm rereading it now again, just to kind of, with all that is going on around us, to try and kind of draw some inspiration.
Absolutely. Well, we are thinking of you during this time, Aniket, and thank you for everything that you've built and all the impact that you've already have, and then all the really exciting impact that will come in the future. Thank you so much for speaking with me today.
Thanks a lot, Eva. Thank you.